want to share my journey on emotional intelligence with you and give you the backgrounds of what emotional intelligence is. Has anybody never heard about emotional intelligence before? Nothing. Nothing at all whatsoever. Oh, great. Awesome. So that's good. So let me start just by saying and sharing a little bit of my journey in this process. My journey has been from the clinical part of my life as a surgeon. I was able to identify a gap in the treatment of patients. This gap was found exactly in the moment where surgeons gave the patient a diagnosis, and then they told them what they were going to do. And then they said, well, I'll see you the day of the surgery or the day of the treatment. That space, in that moment, where that patient's circle changes forever, was left void. Nobody touched that patient, that family, that wife, those kids that were involved in that diagnosis until the final outcome of that process. So this was very close to me because it happened to my best friend. Yes, I am 42 years old and I'm talking to you about a best friend. Why? Because I had one, right? So the first thing that I want to show you is I understood exactly how this came to be because of my experience with Gustavo. He went to the ER with abdominal pain. And he was sent home that same day saying that it was some type of virus, gastroenteritis, reflux type of things. It happened to be cancer, and cancer from the appendix. That is extremely rare. It is so rare that there is no specific chemotherapy for the cancerous cells that raise from the appendix, because it's very rare. Because the standard of care is that if you have any type of abdominal pain that mimics, reflects, or tries to be something close to an appendicitis, you have to take that appendix out, because that low percentage of people that have cancerous cells in that appendix can go through a very, very rough process. So I've been with Gustavo throughout the whole process, but unfortunately, being an MD allows you to go into the literature in ways that normally people don't go, right? You go into evidence-based journals, you go into statistical journals to find answers, right? And I did find that prognosis was not good. So I knew that I had a couple of years, maybe more, to deal with that. And unfortunately, Gustavo passed away 3 years ago, but I was available for him in that journey, and he helped me understand that gap and push me to go into coaching and into health coaching, and furthermore into emotional intelligence. So as you can see in the middle there, we've been friends since we were 5 years old in kindergarten, and that's the day of his surgery, right? That was the day that his life was going to change forever because he underwent one of the biggest, if not the biggest surgery out there in medicine. So let's get into this right now. So there is a difference between being intelligent and being smart. Does anybody know what that difference is? In the essence of time, I'm going to tell you. Okay? So everybody is born intelligent. That means you are born with the ability to learn. I'm going to take that back a little bit. Since the moment you are conceived, you start learning. There is a learning process in your cells, everywhere. You are learning. Therefore, everybody is intelligent. But being smart means that you are able and capable of applying your knowledge to whatever it is you do, right? So when you have this in your mind and you have this clear, you understand the difference between being intelligent and being smart, right? So a lot of people are smart in many ways. So when you see this picture right here of all these 8 very famous personalities, you ask yourself, who is smarter or who is more intelligent? That was the way that it was asked before. In this room, let's test to see who is the most intelligent, right? How are you able to do that, right? How can you do that? But in the past, listen, 30, 40 years ago, oh, there was a way. I would give you a test, right? Here's your test, here's your test, here's your test. Everybody would sit down, multiple choice, voila. The most intelligent person in the room is the one with the highest IQ. I can tell you one thing. I had a fight with my attendings and my doctors and all the teachers I have had, because the emotional well-being of that person taking that test will influence that note, that grade. If you have your father in an operating room at that time, if you have a daughter that's going through a rough time, if you yourself are going through a rough time and you're forced to take a test, you have to be strong as an ox to be able to block that emotion from the fact that you're taking a test that's going to change your life, because they're going to actually look at that grade and give you a pass or fail, right? Interviews for jobs, same thing. You have to be able to know how to block your emotions, whatever is happening in your life, to be able to move forward. So, remember, there is one thing called IQ, and there's another thing called EQ, which is the emotional quotient. That's not given by a test. There are multiple tools out there. Just remember, this is out there. This information is out there for you to go and Google and find out, how can I find what's my emotional status, right? And although it does sound like a lecture, EI 101, it's not. It's not a lecture. It's me giving you the information that is out there and sharing my journey. The fact that I'm giving you a talk on emotional intelligence does not make me emotionally intelligent. People that know me know that, right? I am not. That is a journey. That is not an easy thing to do. But everyone is different. Everybody has a different type of EQ, right? So as we move forward, I'll tell you a little bit the history about how this emotional intelligence came to be. So the first term that kind of was close to this was social intelligence, right? A little bit vague, 1930s, social intelligence. Then some guy by the name of Maslow, have you heard him? Very famous pyramid, right? He introduced the term social strength, right? What are the drivers that I need to have to be accepted socially, right? But then, this gentleman right here in the 1970s, anybody know who that is? That's Howard Gardner. He said, well, you know what? There are multiple intelligences. There's not just one intelligence, there are multiple intelligence. So he came up with this term. Now it's different. Okay, what do you mean there are multiple intelligence? He defied the IQ thing, right? He kind of put that in the back burner for everybody. So I show this again, and I'm going to show you what are the 8 types of intelligence that Howard Gardner brought to life, right? So if you look at Albert Einstein, for example, remember this picture, it's going to go away, right? Albert Einstein, he had mathematical, right? Mathematical intelligence. Then you had Shakespeare. He had verbal, linguistic type of intelligence. You had Taylor Swift, right? She had musical, artistic intelligence. Joe Montana and all those crazy athletes you see today that you wonder how they do what they do, they have kinesthetic intelligence. They're able to perform with their body in ways that you thought can't be done. When you see these people jump and run and do all this stuff, that is part of being intelligent. You also have spatial intelligence, Leonardo da Vinci, you know, the way of trying to put form into function. You have 2 ones that are similar, but are very different, because one is intrapersonal. That means like Dr. Phil or Oprah or anybody that is very intelligent in advising, listening, incorporating information that others are giving to you to be able to provide some type of counsel. And then you have interpersonal intelligence. All the leaders, Martin Luther King was the example I came up with. He has the ability and the intelligence to communicate, to lead with words. And then you have the naturalistic type of intelligence, ecological intelligence. Jane Goodall, if you haven't heard of her, look her up. She came up with amazing discoveries with chimpanzees regarding how the animal world uses tools like we do, and all the similarities between our race and the animals. It's really amazing. Howard Gardner brings up 8.5, and he gives that half, I don't know why, don't ask me, to an existentialist or religious type of intelligence. But you know what? If you put your mind to it, there are a lot of intelligences out there too. What about the intelligence to manage your money? What's that called? Investment intelligence? What about the intelligence in a corporation? Is that corporate intelligence? I'm telling you, I'm wanting to read a book on corporate intelligence. I haven't seen it. So there's an idea for everybody, right? You have to be, I mean, I lived it. I came from a very different world to a very different world. And I would have loved to have a guidebook on how to be intelligent in a corporate scenario. That is something you gain with the process, right? But that's not out there. So as this went on, you see there are multiple intelligences now, and the term emotional intelligence was brought up by two gentlemen, Peter Salovey and John Mayer. They wrote an article on emotional intelligence, and this happened in the 1990s. They came up with an article, it's online, you go to Google and you put Salovey and Mayer, and you find the article. You can read it if you want to, it's not that long. They came up with the pillars of emotional intelligence, what makes emotional intelligence. But then, some genius decided to write a book, right? And he wrote a book, and his name was, anybody know?
Daniel Goleman?
Boom. Is that you?
Yeah.
Boom. Give her some, I don't know what. Right? So Daniel Goleman decided, well, let's write a book based on this article and based on my technology or what I think should be. Over 60 million copies sold. It's one of the most, amazing bestsellers out there. Because people took it. And this was going on in the defiance of the EQ, 1995. His book was put into play in every sphere, right? Corporate, schools, businesses, hospitals, doctors, everybody was talking about emotional intelligence. It got the cover of Time magazine in 1995. It brought EQ to life, literally, right? And this is 1995. Internet, a little bit there, but when you got Time magazine, you got the cover of Time magazine, this was big, right? So this 1995 is when it all kind of started to evolve, right? So there are 5 pillars of emotional intelligence. 5 pillars. You can go and look for them, and you probably read a little bit of differences there, here and there. I'll give you my 5 pillars, right? So the first one, the first thing you need to have before you go into considering yourself able to take the journey on emotional intelligence is self-knowledge. How well do you know yourself? How well do you think you know yourself? Right? You go into every morning, you look at that same person in the mirror, you do things naturally, but how well do you know yourself? What part of this emotional intelligence journey are you in? Right? Who are you? How do you react? How do you act? Do you know that? You literally know how you act, right? How are you? How do you feel yourself regarding emotional intelligence? That's the first question you have to ask yourself. I hope that out of this conversation we're having today, or this talk, you go and question yourself on many things and how to start your journey. It's not an easy one to do, but it's a good one. So the first thing is self-knowledge. The second thing, I put a play pause button, is self-control, right? How do you control your emotions? Are you able to control your emotions? What are I see you laughing over there. Probably some memories are coming to your mind. We all have those, right? Are you able to put pause and play to your emotions? That moment in time where you want to react and you just pause and think about it, that is something you need to know when you start your journey. How am I going to be able to control my emotions? Do I control my emotions? What do I need to do in order to do that? Self-knowledge, self-control. One of the most important ones, motivation. What motivates you? Why a fishing pole? You remember that vintage 1960 cartoon of the little boy on a horse/donkey with a pole and a carrot, and the donkey just running, right? What's the carrot in your fishing pole? What motivates you every time you wake up? It could be money, it could be your job, it could be God, it could be anything. This is not judgment, right? This is something for you to acknowledge. What motivates you? There are many books out there that are even called What Motivates You, right? You can find a lot of that, but this is a key pillar. What is your motivation? Understand what motivates you to move forward. Next is empathy. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, emotionally. When you get an answer back from somebody, when you get a communication from somebody, before you react, right? Make sure you understand how that person is feeling when that gave you that answer. Be aware that some people have a lot of things going on that are not emotionally intelligent, and try to control your emotions when you're forced to answer back. Being able to understand other people's emotions by filling their shoes and getting into their position is a key pillar in emotional intelligence, empathy. Now, the fifth one, for me the most important of them all, was initially called social awareness. That is very vague for me, so I kind of tweaked it, and I give you assertiveness. Assertiveness is the ability of being neutral with emotions, not being impulsive, not being passive. A couple of examples, I know you're going to laugh. So, how many times have you had that reaction, bursting, without even thinking, no filter? Somebody gives you something and you immediately react, and then you go back and you go, ooh, I kind of overdid it, then you have to go and apologize, and apologizing feels great, but then, you know, I should have done this, I should have done that. Flip side of the coin is being passive, right? How many times have you had that opportunity that you're in a meeting and you want to say something, but you don't say it, you kind of keep quiet, and you leave the meeting and said, you know, I should have said that, right? Or somebody else says it and you go, that could have been me, I could have said that, right? So assertiveness is the ability of being neutral. It's the ability of knowing how to manage yourself in that wide range from being impulsive to being passive. So I gave you the easy part, what's out there. That's the what. That is out there in the world. There are books, internet, everything. You can go and Google and say that. And that's the what. The when, the where, the how depends on you. Identify yourself. Where do you stand in this process? It is work in progress. It is not something that you turn on and off. It is a journey. Begin your journey. That's the first step, is beginning your journey. And PWYP, practice what you preach. I'm trying to. I'm standing here giving you this, and every time I'm faced with any type of circumstance, I remember this. So practice what you preach. Before I end, because I'm very close to finishing up, I just want to let you know that the brain has two sides. Your left side is really easy, starts with an L, it's a logical brain. All the circuits, right, you can turn on and off. Yes and no. Binomial, yes and no. That's it. Your emotional side of the brain, which is the right side of the brain, doesn't follow a pattern. It's very hard to control. You cannot turn emotions on and off. It's not an easy thing to do. You can put them aside, but they're not gone. They're there. So emotional intelligence is being able to control that. I'll give you this phrase, right? This is not something that just erupted from nowhere. This comes from a long time ago. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And I'll tell you something. When I gave this chat in TED, I didn't understand how important it was to bring emotional intelligence to your kids. Now I'm doing that with my older daughter, and now it started with my younger daughter. And Walt Disney helped me. They helped me. Inside Out. If you have not seen this movie, that is your homework. And if you have kids, watch it with them. Understand the 5 emotions. My daughter can recognize when she's angry. She can understand when she wants to bring joy into her life, when she's sad, when she's disgusted, when she's nervous, right? This helped me with my older daughter. You cannot understand how much it did. And with that, I finish, and I thank you so much again for your invitation.